want to speak about is victory in the midst of harassment. And Jesus in the Beatitudes in Matthew 5:5 said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." And so Jesus was referring directly to Psalm 37 when he said this. This is not something we would automatically catch. But in familiarizing ourselves this morning with Psalm 37, we'll be able to easily see this is what he was referring to. And we will just look at part 1 of this psalm this morning, verses 1 through 11. But we will read this later. I want to give more of some introduction to why I am speaking on this and why it's what's on my heart. The emphasis of this part 1 of Psalm 37 has to do with mental harassment that believers have to go through, things that are threatening and discouraging to us in life's circumstances. And you may not fully understand this, but as a pastor, as any true pastor would, it's not just the harassment I have to put up with that comes against me or my family, but I feel the harassment that comes against you. I feel the weight of that. It's not just something I learn about what is happening to you and I feel sorry for you. I feel the weight of it. And for instance, the Foldies having their vehicle unfairly repossessed a week or so ago through a total mismanagement of the loan company, and then the boiler going out in their house in the midst of the kind of weather we're experiencing, and then different ones of us getting sick after a long time. There was a long time that no one in our church, thank God, was getting COVID or any other kinds of sicknesses. Not all sicknesses are COVID. There are some really bad colds and other things. And now Teresa. And not the least of which was me hitting that deer Wednesday night. I couldn't believe it. That, normally, I'm sure we've all come across deer while we're driving. Usually they're moving, and so you at least get a split second to hit the brakes or change direction. This deer, I think it's the very biggest deer I've ever seen, was not moving. It was just standing in the road. And with their natural camouflage, I could not see it until it was right there. And thank God I was close to Lima. If my car had quit running and I had to walk to Lima in the midst of that, it would not have been good. And I don't know why the engine was running badly after that, but fortunately I made it back to the house. And then when the company came to tow it away, or it's being assessed for whether it's going to be totaled or fixable, I doubt it's fixable. I could not start it again. I would not have been able to take it out on the road again. And it was quite a project for the tow truck driver to even get it positioned so that they could hook it up to tow it away. And so the very attractive 2021 red Toyota Camry out there is not mine. It's the insurance company has arranged for us to have that. But what surprised me was how I felt totally at peace in the midst of this. I mean, it almost didn't seem right that I shouldn't be anxious and that I had absolutely no physical repercussions from it. But these things weigh on us. And even what's happening in our nation has created a spiritual heaviness. Not just because of things we know. There's like heavy clouds, threatening things like what's going to happen next? What are they going to do next? What does the future look like? These things weigh on, even unconsciously. And all these things weigh on me every day, and I have to battle through in waiting on God, probably at least a half an hour a day, not praying about things. Connie and I do that at another time of day. But I've just got to get before God until I feel these things lift. And they do. It's like a miracle every day. It doesn't mean I don't continue to be concerned, but the weight of it lifts off. And whenever we take steps of faith, and God is doing wonderful things, God has been doing wonderful things over this last year or more in our church. Whenever that happens, do you think the enemy's happy about it? You think he's standing on the sidelines applauding us? The enemy has one of the first motion detectors, and when he sees believers beginning to move in God, he begins his resistance. And a lot of it is through harassment and trying to rob us of our joy. And I've, being in the ministry as long as I have in 5 different countries, it's normal. I'm not taken by surprise at all. In fact, if I didn't experience some resistance, I'd wonder if I was really doing God's will. But it doesn't mean I enjoy it. But we don't have to just take it. Even though we recognize it, and it's normal, it doesn't mean we have to, just have to embrace this and take it for what it is. It's not the way it works. And the word meek, going back to this beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Meek does not mean weak. I think it's one of the most misused words in the English language and misunderstood words in the Bible. When it says that Moses was the meekest of all men, when you picture Moses, are you picturing a wimp leading over 2 million people through the desert, always disobeying, always complaining, always blaming him for every situation? Do you think a wimp could do that? What it really means in the vernacular are people who don't get shook. That's what it means. Maybe I'll start using that instead of meek from here on. But meek is the Bible term. So if we expect to experience victory in the midst of this psychological warfare, there are spiritual principles we are responsible to comply with. It's not just a matter of, well, okay, it's all going to happen. No, we are responsible to respond to God in the principles that makes this work and allows him to give us victory. Psalm 37 clearly shows us what these principles are. In part 1, verses 1 through 11, specifically address this psychological warfare. David, here and there in this psalm, makes a point. Then he sort of muses on it, wanders around discussing. Then he comes back to it and sort of wandering down bunny trails, and then comes back, moves on to the next point. That's why I'll be jumping ahead and then coming back to the same verse, but it will all tie together with the Lord's help. So I want to read this passage. Do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret. There it is the second time. Do not fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For evil men will be cut off, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace. This is what Jesus was referring back to in the Beatitudes. So my emphasis isn't so much about the destiny of what's going to happen to evildoers as much as about God's faithfulness to us in the midst of our distress, and our responsibility to benefit from his faithfulness. But if we're going to show indifference or apathy or ignorance about his promises, we on our part will actually close the door to allowing his intervention in our situations, and worse yet, can even result in unbelief. The same is accusing God of being unfair to us. None of us would ever say that, but in essence, if we're not going to follow his principles, that's what we're doing. If we're continuing to complain instead of rejoicing in the Lord, we're closing the door and actually accusing the Lord of being unfaithful. But embracing God's ways are those who Jesus refers to as the meek in this beatitude. Remember, not weak. The don't get shookers. Now, evildoers are not necessarily always people, but even evil spirits, influences that harass us, even by arranging distressful situations. And even if they don't create the distressful situations, life has them anyway, but the enemy will try to use these and blow them out of proportion to bring distress. And I'll give an example that my son in California told me about just this week, and something that he said the Lord taught him through it. But even when we are treated unjustly by people, remember what Paul says in Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. We are in this life on the best of days as believers, walking against a countercurrent, because the current of this world is totally in the opposite direction, totally self-centered, and that is not the direction in which we as believers are walking. So there's always opposition. So the source of the harassment is always from Satan, ultimately. And sometimes it can even come through Christians who behave carnally. Not that they necessarily know it. They're not necessarily saying, well, I'm going to help the devil to attack my brother. But out of their ignorance, out of their disobedience, if we had time, I could tell you about some attacks I've had from other Christians that they probably didn't even intend to be attacks. I'll just throw one so you know what I'm talking about. When we're trying to get our Bible school started in Paraguay, and another missionary, American, from Argentina came up, and because of something he had heard, warned all the other pastors in the capital city of Asuncion, don't let your young people go to Velacoop's Bible school because they're just here to split your church and rob your young people. And we knew this person. We thought he was a personal friend. And not even knowing he was doing this, we took him and his wife out to eat. And, I wish he had been man enough to say, Bella Coop, I just don't trust you, let's forget about going out to eat. But it was a hug in the front and a knife in the back. So what did we have to do? We had to forgive him. Because if God's told you to do something, there's no one that can stop it. So I said, well, Lord, I guess you're just controlling the timing. And when the day came to start, 3 young men showed up at the door of our house and said, when's your Bible school going to start? They were actually from other towns. They weren't even from that city. I said, whenever you guys are ready. They said, we're ready. I said, it just started. Come on in. We started in our house, and then it grew, and we had to find a place downtown. And then young people, even adults, came from those other churches. You don't have to fight evil. If it's God, remember when Abraham and Lot's shepherds were fighting over the land in Genesis? And Abraham, who was the one that had the word from God, he had the promise. He told Lot's shepherd, pick what you want. He wasn't going to fight over it. And so they did. But God protected Abraham, and Abraham got everything he was supposed to have. So we don't have to move into that kind of carnality in struggling with each other. That's what these pastors in Burundi that I just read see, studying the scriptures, move them away. They had been acting carnally. They knew the Lord, they were Christians, but they weren't operating by kingdom principles. So these are just some of the realities. It's the things that cause church splits and all this and that, and many more. But we don't have to lower ourselves to that level. And so if we understand what John meant in 1 John 4:4, the one who is in you, who's that? Christ, is greater than the one who is in the world, Satan. Do you realize that? That the presence of Jesus in you has authority over satanic attacks. That doesn't mean they're all going to end in the moment, but you will have victory over them. And so we can apply that as a promise. There's times I say that right out loud when I feel that there is a spiritual opposition. I just say it out loud. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. I break your false authority and I command you to leave from me. So here we are. Here are David's instructions to us. In verse 1, do not fret. The Hebrew word actually means get heated. Get heated up. What a meek person doesn't do. A meek person in this beatitude is not going to fret. So we're not talking about doesn't get shook up. So we're not talking about Elvis Presley, I'm all shook up. I think a lot of you are actually old enough to remember that. What you probably would be amazed to know that I played electric guitar in a rock and roll band. But that was BC. But to just give this command, do not fret, is meaningless. You cannot not fret just by deciding not to. You have to apply what David is going to tell us here. Because fretting isn't an intellectual thing, it's an emotional thing. You know what a lot of us Anglo-Saxons of German and British and that kind of descent, we think that we are intellectual beings with emotions. Do you know physiologically what we really are? We're emotional beings with an intellect. We are more emotionally oriented than we are intellectually. If you don't think I know, then ask our friend Lauren here, who has a doctorate in psychology. Maybe you didn't know that. But see, Latin American culture, they don't think that way. They're not afraid to show their emotions because they're not Anglo-Saxons. They don't come from that. But we're going to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Nonsense. That is not biblical. In fact, it's pride-centered. And so, the very first instruction that we still get from verse 2, David is saying, look ahead. Be aware of the destiny of evil men. Keep that in mind. What is their end going to be? For like grass, they will soon wither. And there are 9 verses throughout this psalm that keep repeating that the evil are going to have no future. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily carnal Christians. Hopefully, we're all going to learn and stop acting carnally. But I'm talking about abject evil. Those who give themselves to that willingly do not have a future. But it looks to us in the moment like they do. It looks like they're getting away with everything. And that can bother us. And so whether it's evil people or evil spirits, it's the same. Neither have a future. Secondly, under look ahead is be aware of your future. 5 times in this psalm it says that the righteous will inherit the land. What do you think that's talking about? An eternal future, an inheritance. It's not something just for a while. It's eternal, our future. Made me laugh when you remember our special speaker, Dr. Fred Antonelli, president of EBI, when he spoke here a few weeks ago. Years ago, I knew him, met up with him down in Baltimore. And we'd known each other, and I said, Freddie, what are you doing these days? That's before he was Dr. Antonelli. And he said, I'm selling permanent real estate. I said, really? I said, what's that? He says, grape plots. The guy's never changed. He keeps pulling those things on me. But be aware of our future. Now, this verse, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Here it is again. Do not fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. The part, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Be still, literally, in the Hebrew means be silent. Quit yammering. Quit complaining. Or we're closing the door to the Lord. So it is waiting with expectation for God to fulfill his plan for you. It's not wondering if he will. He will. The main trial for us, I think, is that we want immediate intervention by God. And that rarely is going to happen. So it's this waiting. We have to learn to weather the storm and keep our mouth shut of negative things, but not keep them shut in proclaiming God's promises and his faithfulness. And so this is the way the meek handle harassment. Verse 11, but the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace. With patient faith instead of self-assertion. I'm going to fix this. This brings me to my son. He and I are a lot alike in many ways, not so much the really nice ways about him are more like his mother. He looks more like me, but he can roll with the punches. You can insult him, he'll take it as a compliment. But he is the manager over 3 high-end properties in California in different cities. And as a result, he gets free, high-speed internet in his manager's apartment because he provides the internet company with business for all these other apartments. I think he's got 120 in the one he lives in. They're very high-end. But his internet went out. Well, they have 2 toddlers. And for our daughter-in-law's sanity, there are times she just has to let the 6-year-old and the 3-year-old watch some programs. Good programs, but it's all on internet. And it went out. And so he called the internet company. And they said, well, but we can't help you because you're in a separate category. You have free service. And if we were to fix it through our end, you'd wind up with a $170 monthly bill, because that's the service that you get. And so he's used it to, as a manager, of figuring things out. He's going to fix it, and he's been through this, and he's full of anxiety. Now, I'm not saying Satan directly arranged this, but it's one of those everyday kind of situations in life that the enemy can use. And you get heated up. And you begin, and he said, I was fretting. But it came to me, commit this to the Lord. Quit trying to fix it yourself. And so he said, Lord, I give this to you. And somebody gave him a phone number. They said, oh, try this phone number. And that was the person who could fix it. And they said, oh, what you need, we're going to mail you a new modem for free. And next day, everything was back with even better service. And he said, the Lord used that as one more lesson. You realize we don't understand, we don't learn these things all at once. They come in stages. We grow in them. But he said, I moved a few steps forward on not fretting. And it's like a habit. I'm still learning this. But something, and I don't even wait till there's a problem anymore. I know something I got to do, and I say, Lord, it's yours. And ideas come. They seem like my ideas. But it's too coincidental when I start getting a lot of good ideas. I'm not that smart. And so this first one is look ahead. Now, David essentially says, look up. Don't only look ahead, look up. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. We have to displace our awareness of our anxiety by proclaiming God's promises for you, and to say it. Say it out loud. Confession is made with the mouth, not with our mind. Lord, I believe you are going to take care of this. I commit this to you. Now, you probably always thought your pastor was a little odd, but I'll give you some proof that I am. A lot of times I have trouble going to sleep, partly because I got so many thoughts in my mind. And so one thing I've done, and it works, is I'll start at like a number like 631 and count backwards by sevens. Now that takes some concentration. But I can't do that and be thinking about all the other things that are on my mind too. It displaces all of that. So I'm there, 631, 524, 517. I've actually gotten pretty good at it. I'm going to have to start doing it by nines or something. But it displaces all those other thoughts. Well, let's displace our concentration on anxiety with God's promises and say them out loud, proclaim them. And commit your way to the Lord literally means, in the Hebrew, roll your burdens off onto the Lord. That's what it means. That word for commit there. Roll them off. And reminds me of a story in the old days of a man that was walking down the road, and he was carrying a sack. I know you thought I brought a snack for myself, but it was a sack, not a snack. And it was heavy. And another man came by on a buckboard, a wagon, and he stopped me and he said, "Friend, hop up and I'll give you a ride. Where are you going?" "Well, I'm going in the same direction." So the guy's up there on the seat of the buckboard, and they're going along, and the driver says, "Well, drop your sack in the back." He said, "Oh, you've been so kind to give me a ride. I can't impose on you by taking my sack too." He already had it. It was on his shoulder. Drop it. Roll it off onto the Lord. Let it go. I was wishing I could find this verse, and I'll find it yet. I want it for my own sake. But I remember reading somewhere in the Old Testament that has to do with this, that the Hebrew word meant, in committing things to the Lord, to open your hands, to do that. Are you capable of doing that on the count of three? Go ahead. 1, 2, 3. You can do it. Sorry, you couldn't, but you'll get over your arthritis. And so this is something I've done. It sounds silly, but for myself, it's no magic thing to the Lord. But when I'm beginning to feel some anxiety, I say, "Lord, I give this to you." So in my mind, I know I've done something about it. And so, even Jesus had to commit something to the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane. "Father, if it's your will, take this cup from me." And because he had submitted it, he had the strength to be able to go to the cross. Jesus understands our harassments. So if we keep concentrating and talking about our anxieties, we're not looking up. This is how the meek walk. And if we don't, we have not committed it to the Lord. It says committed to the Lord. So after looking ahead, as David told us, look ahead and look up. The final one is be constructive. Trust the Lord and do good. That takes us all the way back to verse 3 again. In verse 8 it says, refrain from anger and turn from wrath. We can feel that in the midst of our anxieties, especially if it has to do with other people. But that is not doing good. That's why David says, refrain from this. Somebody needs forgiveness, forgive them. Sometimes it doesn't come with one fell swoop. I had something happen to me. I had to forgive the person every day for 2 years before I was free of it. But you keep doing it until you're free of it. To not do this is closing the door to the Lord's intervention in your situation and is not walking in the way of the meek. And so, verse 21 of doing the good things in this psalm, the righteous give generously. Verse 26, they are always generous and lend freely. 30 through 31, the mouth of the righteous man utters wisdom and his tongue speaks what is just, the law of his God and in his heart. This is doing good. So in conclusion, the very end of the psalm, verses 39 through 40, the salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him. So look ahead with expectation and confess it. Look up, displacing your anxieties with God's realities. Be constructive, be proactive, confronting evil with good. What's in your sack? I'll bet everybody has something. But cast it upon the Lord. I suggest that when you go home, if you're taking this at all seriously, that you take a piece of paper and you write down a list of all of the issues, the harassments, the things that are bothering you. Write them down. Wad it up and say, Lord, I'm giving this to you. Tear it up, burn it, whatever, and throw it away. Just as a step of faith, a moment you can look at and say, Lord, this is yours. It's not mine anymore. We come out of these trials stronger and freer. After the anxieties and the dilemmas have passed, it's not just that we're back at square one. We move forward. We're stronger. We're freer. And now we can help somebody else and say, you know, friend, I've been through that. And I can tell you, the Lord will be faithful. Connie, you can come back. And so, once more, blessed are the meek, the not good shukers, for they will inherit the earth.